Unacademy. Let's crack it.
Hi, welcome to Pani with Pavan. This is a special YouTube program on Unacademy platform wherein we are introducing the top rankers in the civil service examination, and it provides an opportunity for the existing civil services aspirants to gain a lot of experience regarding the civil services preparation and also to know about the secrets of success in this civil services examination. We already have seen some of the top rankers like Pradeep Kumar Singh, the last year's top ranker in the UPSC examination, along with others. Now we have with us Ravi Kapoor, who is serving right now as a Deputy Commissioner in the Ministry of Finance. And he has been in services for the last almost 10 years. And he got into Indian Revenue Service Customs. He has a very rich and varied experience, has worked over years in airport customs, and he has also worked as in charge of Central Excise District Authority. At present, he is the authorized representative of the Revenue Department in the GST Tribunal. Apart from that, he is also a very dedicated civil services aspirant, as well as dedicated to help the civil servants, civil services aspirants. And he has written a very popular book. The name of the book is slightly, we can say, good or popular. The name of the book is Ultimate Cheat Book of Essay. And also he has written another book on answer writing. Recently, he has launched an ultimate UPSC game wherein he was trying to explain to the students how to prepare for this examination in a more successful manner. Now, let us have an open conversation with Ravi regarding his preparation, regarding his job, and most importantly, how he is going to help the students with his ultimate game. So, Ravi, first of all, let us start with this one. Why did you decide, when did you decide to prepare for UPSC examination? What are your academic qualifications?
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, sir. It's always a privilege to speak with you. It has been a privilege of mine to speak with you since the day I started preparing for this examination. You've been there with me and you're there with me now after all these years. So, sir, to answer your question, it all started for me when I was in a rugby match, actually. And so I was competing in a rugby match and training to be part of the Indian team for an international tournament when I got injured. And so there was a scuffle in that rugby match, a high contact game, and so you're liable to get injured. But this one was a serious injury, and it was serious enough to land me in the hospital. So once that happened, I realized that my experience in sports and my career in sports as such was limited to the extent that my body could take it. And so it was very temporary. And that sense of temporariness became very, very clear to me once I got out of commission with an injury which happened in a split second. So that injury put me out of commission for 6 months from athletics completely, which I was very deeply involved in. And in those 6 months, I realized that I need to do something which I'm passionate about, which can be more lasting, which can last longer, and which can give me more satisfaction. So for me, at that point in time, civil services was the best option. And it is something that I've always admired about, but I never actually imagined that I would end up clearing it one day, to be very honest. So that is what got me started. And here we are today.
Yeah, in fact, I forgot to mention that he is a very good athlete, also sports person. Had he not been preparing for UPSC examination, he would have definitely won medals for India. A multi-talented person, definitely, Ravi. Right? Now, what is your academic qualification, Ravi?
Sir, I am a computer engineer, and I consider myself trained in psychology as well because I've been pursuing that subject. It was my optional subject, and then I pursued it outside of my academics as well. I pursued a master's in clinical psychology, which I have recently completed. So I like to now think of myself as a psychologist, but I don't know if I can say that because I have a master's and not a PhD yet.
Right. Ravi, uh, let me start with your job. You have been in the government service for the last, I think, 9 years, if I'm
Yes,
not
sir.
wrong. Yeah.
More or
You
less,
have been,
yes.
yeah, it's more than that. So let me find out from you, how was this experience of working with Government of India?
Sir, it's a very rich experience with a lot of highs and lows, and it is a long journey, sir. So, like any long journey, you can expect there to be very good things and not very good things. But
Right.
what I can say, sir, for people and your students and aspirants in general, that
Mhm.
sir, it is not overhyped, and the level of respect and admiration that this job brings is astonishing. It astonishes me to this day, and I think that it might be something. I think it's a very rare privilege. I think, sir, it's a privilege to summarize the whole thing in a very few words. It is a privilege because it gives you access to a world view from behind the government, from inside the system that otherwise you can never get. So you get to realize the actual complexity of life, and you get to realize that the world is not so simple as it appears to be, and things don't just happen magically. And the reality is very complex, and you get to appreciate that complexity because you are in the middle of it. And so that privilege, sir, that exposure, I think, is the number one thing, and I'm very happy to have had that in my life.
Right, Ravi, let me put you in some kind of tight corner. You have been in customs and exchange, right? Recently, we have seen in Mumbai the cases related to Wankhede. As many people think, is there any lot of corruption in your service?
Sir, I would say the corruption in my service is exactly equivalent to the corruption everywhere else. And but the difference being that this department, this service that I belong to, the Indian Revenue Services, has been in the limelight as such of everybody since a while, because there was a point in time which we know as the Inspector Raj, which
Mhm.
was predominant in this country. And if you had that type of system, it was liable to be abused in any country, let alone this one. And so, since that happened, and after that, many changes have occurred. A very important thing, sir, which I learned from you, in fact, when you used to teach us about Arthashastra and about Kautilya in public administration, is that when you are dealing with revenue, when you're dealing with revenue, you can expect some pilferage. Every king can expect some pilferage. And so, sir, the attention by default goes to this because it is revenue we're dealing with, straight revenue,
Right.
right? So it is a very direct connection with money and finance. And so that brings with it a certain amount of speculation. To say if it is corrupt or not, sir, I would have to disagree, because I find that the proportion of people is always roughly equivalent, regardless of the department, regardless if of, in fact, even if it's the government or the private job. So I would say, sir, it's exactly the same like it is everybody everywhere else, but it is much lower, in my humble opinion, than what people imagine.
Okay, it is much less. You have worked as in the airport customs also, right? So,
Yes.
did you have any kind of instances wherein you caught people smuggling gold or drugs or anything like that? Because that is what we see in the films also. So, I just wanted to know from you.
Yes, sir. I have had a number of interesting encounters and incidences.
Hmm.
As the assignment of the airport was definitely one of the most interesting ones,
Hmm.
because it just so happened that while I was at the airport was the time where there was a difference in duty of gold. So importing gold without paying duty was highly incentivized, as much as the finances were concerned, by default by the tax structure. So that always leads to some kind of leakage in the system. And so
Right.
this leakage becomes apparent when you see the passengers themselves physically. And I did find that it was happening, and I found how creative it was. Uh, People would smuggle gold in all kinds of different mechanisms, which go beyond your imagination. And every day we would find something surprising. You
Hmm.
could find gold on the borders of a suitcase, or you could find gold concealed within the body of a person. and we had many such interesting cases. But the thing which I learned most, sir, which struck me and which has stayed with me most, is that none of the people who were doing it were actually the owners of the operation. They were just poor
Okay.
people mostly, and pushed into this by economic difficulties.
Right. Right.
And the people who would really control the scene was they were not there physically, so they would get other people, poor people, to carry it for them. So this was the most striking part, in fact, not the way they used to conceal the gold, but the way they used to use people to become mules, so to speak, and to get the gold. And how
Right.
that system worked, where they would come, get some gold, and then immediately take a round trip back and then try to get some more. And so it was a fascinating experience. And yes, I saw quite a bit of it.
Right. My next question is again related to your job only. How your service had changed after implementation of GST?
Sir, the changes, I believe, are still occurring and will continue to occur for a few years.
Hmm.
After GST, there has been a lot of digitization. There has been a lot of interconnection between various departments. Now it is no longer existing in a silo because the tax structure itself has changed. Now the chain between other taxes has become seamless. And for
Right.
businesses, this is a difficult thing to adjust to, but everybody agrees that it's a very good thing in the long run. And this is what we are seeing, I think, with the implementation of it as well. So it is going in the right direction. I think the tax collections are going to see a massive increase and a radical simplification, which was the whole aim of this idea. We are seeing that happen, although it is taking some time. And of course, there are teething issues in a developing country like India. But overall, sir, I can see that the impact is positive, in my opinion.
You mean to say that at the end of the day, GST is good?
Yes, sir, that's what I would like to say. Yes.
Any other reforms you suggest in GST?
Are other reforms in GST? Well, sir, I work in the GST tribunal, but the GST tribunal has not yet begun. So I still work in what is called as the Central Excise and Service Tax Tribunal.
Right.
So it is these other older cases of excise and service tax from the erstwhile era that I now deal with in quite a lot of detail. I think we need some kind of conflict resolution mechanism like this
Right.
tribunal ASAP, because people are confused. And also, sir, I think that there needs to be some kind of clarificatory mechanism which should make things very, very clear, crystal clear. So I think that what's happening now is because of the lack of clarity at places, businesses, people, and everybody more or less in the economy is forced to refer to consultants or forced to refer to people who they think are experts, but
Right.
the experts themselves may or may not have the correct knowledge. So some very crystal clear kind of mechanism or clarification, I think, would be very welcome and would take care of a lot of issues, along with the conflict resolution mechanism. A very good institutionalized, legal, fast and quick mechanism, I think, should be there.
And I think there is some controversy related to this input tax credit also. Do you know something about it?
Yes, sir. Certainly, it's a very, very big part of the chain of indirect taxation. As much as indirect taxation is concerned, sir,
Right.
it is a tax by nature, by definition, which gets passed on. It gets passed on from person to person in that chain of production until it lands up in the final consumer. And it
Right.
gets added in that bill that you end up paying on the market. This is essentially what GST is, what excise was. Now, the issue is that as people pay tax in the process of creation, of production, of manufacture,
Right.
and they pass on that burden needs to be compensated. They need to be compensated for that burden. You need a mechanism to keep offsetting that tax that they pay at every level. This essentially, this offsetting mechanism is input tax credit, or what we used to call SENVAT credit in
Right.
the excise regime. Now, sir, with the GST now, the input tax mechanism is expected to become simplified, and it needs to now become clear. And this is what we are seeing, because with GST now the chain of causation becomes very clear.
Right.
And so you know exactly which production led to which type of manufacture at the end of the chain, and the suppliers are all connected in that seamless chain. And so now the issue of leakage can be radically simplified. with input credit. So yes, it is a very essential element with it. With GST, hopefully it will be simplified. And another thing which it really impacts is that the fundamental cardinal principle of taxation is that taxes should never be exported.
Right.
Taxes should never be exported such that the manufacturers and the local producers of the economy can get that benefit. And so they should not be penalized for producing something in India, and such that their product, the Indian product as such in the market, should have a competitive advantage at least. And what ends up getting compensated is this input tax credit at the time of export, at the time of that event, when the goods leave the country and enter the foreign market. All of the input tax credit that has become accumulated needs to be pushed back into the economy. So you need a very intricate system, complicated system, intelligent system to do that to the right person at the right time.
Right.
Because that margin is very critical for businesses. So you have the whole issue of ease of doing business also intertwined with this.
Right, that's true.
So one of the very important things, and also expected to get radically simplified.
Right. So let us come back to your preparation, Ravi. So how did you prepare for this examination? What are the challenges you have faced, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Sir, a major challenge for me, because I had no foundation or grounding in this examination, was to get the right guidance. It took me a long time to realize what the right approach was to begin with. Once that approach was understood, things became easier and I was able to clear the examination successively. It stopped being a problem, but until that happened, it was a big problem and I was completely lost and overwhelmed. And so one of the best things I did was that I met you, and then you helped me in many of these areas. And I would say, in fact, in the entire orientation. So sir, how to deal with this? Because I have noticed that this examination, because of its different nature, is such a unique challenge that nobody is prepared for it after school or college. Nothing like it is there, so nobody has any practice. And everybody comes into it with certain expectations or certain preconceived notions, which turn out to be wrong.
Right.
Because where the UPSC makes sure that you are left surprised at the end of the day, and you're left very challenged.
Right.
Another important thing what I experienced, sir, was that exam is dynamic. Other exams are not so dynamic.
Right.
And so with this examination, you're moving with the world. You're moving as things change. You need to get updated very quickly and at a very good depth. So the challenge was, and the challenge I think remains for me and for others, is to how to accumulate this very wide range of subjects and how to hold it in your head all this while, and how to keep updating that information about economics or polity or finance or sports or whatever is going on everywhere in your world is somewhere within your syllabus. So how do you know all of these things? And I think the last and the biggest challenge was how to develop interest in these various things, because usually we are inclined to satisfy ourselves with one or two areas of interest.
Right.
And we think that that is all that is required in life, and it is usually the case. You do engineering or you do specialization in one subject, perhaps two, but not more than that. But you can't do that in this examination. So you need a very good level of curiosity and interest in a wide variety. How do you maintain that? I think that was and is one of the biggest challenges.
And you must have faced failures also as part of your preparation. How did you cope up with those failures?
So the failures I had actually quite a few in my life already when I entered the civil service examination, because I was already competing in sports. So I had a experience and I had a grounding. Because it was competitive sport, I was doing proper competitions and I was doing meets and tournaments. So that feeling of competitiveness, of winning, losing, failing, not failing was there. The feedback mechanism was very clear. After competing in bodybuilding and powerlifting for a number of years, it becomes very clear to you whether you are good enough or not. So I was able to judge the level of my competition, which I think many people are not able to, because it's not apparent on anybody's face. Nobody can judge
Right.
how well informed this person might be.
Right.
But just by having some experience, a few months in this preparation, I realized that the level is much higher than I anticipated.
Hmm.
And so I was able to gauge that I need to work much harder than I thought. And with that calculation, I was able to, I think, secure myself.
Right. How did you manage your time? Because you were playing for sports and then preparing for UPSC and then doing, this software also. How did you manage your time? That's a
Uh,
difficult task even now for the students preparing for the UPSC examination.
yes, sir. And I would like to be very honest here because I did not manage that time between these things. During the 2 years of preparation or so, in which during which period I did nothing else, I had to stop going to the gym for proper training. So I was doing whatever basic training I could do at home, but I was not spending any time whatsoever in the gym during those periods. And I was very focused. I should not make it sound like it was easy because it was not. So the
Hmm.
answer is that I had to give up one thing in order to maintain the level that is required for this examination. That being said, sir, I have had to do much more difficult things after my examination, after clearing the UPSC Civil Services examination in my life. And that luxury of giving up one thing is no longer there in my life. So I
Right.
have to manage even more things. And sir, the way I do it, I use a number of techniques, sir. I use technology very heavily. So
Right.
I set a lot of reminders on my phone. I
Okay.
set a lot of reminders on my calendar. I use to-do lists. I use
Hmm.
tasks. I am very wary of procrastination because I know that I'm a lazy person. And so I have all of these systems inbuilt around me to make sure I remain on some type of track. And so by pushing myself and reminding myself, by breaking down my deadlines into very manageable micro goals, I
Okay.
get to know what I need to do every day. And
Hmm.
I boil down every day into the three most important things. This is a practice which I follow these
Right.
days, nowadays.
Right.
Three most important things I boil down and I write down and I make sure I do. Uh, and I noticed that if you follow a system like that, and even if you do one of them,
Right.
then the others become very easy.
Right.
So I use these a host of these techniques, sir.
Right. So coming back here, here after getting into services also, you have kept in touch with the students, aspirants. You have been guiding them. What really motivated you to do all those things? Normally, what we see is that once people get into services, they lose interest also. They become so immersed with their job that they lose touch with all these things. But what really motivated you?
Sir, what has motivated me is essentially the transformation which I saw in myself.
Okay.
I did not expect this to happen at all when I entered the UPSC examination. And to me, like it is for many people, the idea was to simply get through it and treat it as an examination. But what ended up happening was different. And that surprised me. And it was, I would say, one of the best things to ever happen to me because I had never been a good student as such in school. And I came to realize that whatever I had been taught in school and college is not necessarily applicable in life, in real life. Whereas what you learn in the civil services, I think, is the real education. It will make you very well informed about the world. It will force you to think. And that process got triggered inside me when I was preparing. And once that process began, once that intellectual curiosity started, it never stopped. It continued.
Right.
And I ended up reading and studying much more in the exam after the examination than during this preparation. And it led to a certain type of positive, very positive change in my life because I became intellectually curious and I became intellectually alive for the first time.
Hmm.
And that boring school system was not there to stifle me anymore. So I would say more or less set me free, and I would say very addicted to academics and studying, so much so that I can't get enough of it, to be honest. And
Right.
so, sir, that is a process which I think if it gets triggered, if it gets triggered in anybody, then there is no stopping them. Then clearing this examination is just going to be one of the things that they'll do. They'll do a lot more. So that I want to replicate that in people as much as possible. I get a kick out of it. I enjoy that a lot. I really like that. So that is why I
Yeah,
do this.
yeah, you have been helping thousands of students, right? You have written books also, right? And you named one of the books as a cheat book on essay, right? What do you mean by that?
Yes, sir. The cheat book, sir, is the idea that every system, sir, every game has rules. Now, I am a computer engineer. I'm also uh, a person who is very inclined towards sports and games, obviously. So I have had this idea in my mind that every system, sir, every system is to some extent hackable. Every system has weaknesses. And if you are a healthy competitor, a good competitor, then you focus not on your competitors, you focus on the system and you focus on how to beat that system. That is your duty, I think. It is not a matter of cheating, it's a duty. And the word cheat book is there to make things interesting, but it is also there to conceal a secret which is hidden in plain sight. Only can be seen by those who are able to penetrate. And so that secret is this, that like every system, the UPSC examination has weaknesses.
Right.
They, at the end of the day, follow a broad pattern in which there is some variation, but they stick to that. And also, sir, they are restricted by their requirement. So they want a particular type of individual. And in order to get that particular type of individual, they must ask a particular type of question in order to filter out the population and to find the right people. And that is the weakness. If you can identify that, then you will break this examination to some extent. And I enjoyed doing that a lot for essay writing. They follow a certain pattern, they expect a certain type of essay, and regardless of the essay topic, for instance, if that system is followed, you will find yourself in the ballpark of a very good score, predictably.
Yeah, can you explain these things with a simple example? Take any one essay and explain those things so that it becomes easier for the students to understand also what you're saying.
So let us take a simple example which was asked in the previous year's question. Technology cannot replace manpower. Right. Simple example which I use in other places as well. Technology cannot replace manpower, sir. When you think about it, looks like a topic which is ambiguous enough.
Right.
Inclusive growth cannot occur with inequality. Let's take a topic like that. Right. Take more or less any topic, sir. You will find, to your shock and surprise, that it is essentially going to be about two things. Right. It can be boiled down into two things, and the essay statement itself will be a description of that relationship. Technology cannot replace manpower is a statement about the relationship between technology and manpower and how one cannot replace the other. The idea is not to comment on that relationship. The idea is to decipher that relationship, is to tell the examiner that I can see through what is being mentioned here between technology and relationship, and I can add value to that without agreeing to that essay topic necessarily. So if you identify what the two things are, you explain what they are, and you talk about the relationship between them in the essay topic, you will find yourself in a very, very good position as much as your content is concerned. And then there are a number of tricks, there are a number of techniques which you can use to make sure that your essay is exactly the type of essay they are looking for. So that is something which is very doable, and it is very predictable. It makes the whole thing predictable, and it takes a subjectivity out.
Right, right. Okay. You have written one more book on answer writing also, I think, in general studies, right? If I'm not wrong.
It is the same book, sir. It is the same book.
Yeah, yeah. It includes answer writing also. So what are the tips you want to give to our students regarding answer writing? General studies or optional, whatever it may be.
For answer writing, sir, I think the answers have to be treated like miniature essays, and the word length is going to be anywhere between 100 words to 600 words. That is a very, very short word length, sir. And the challenge is how to squeeze a lot of information in that word limit, and how to make sure that you are exactly, precisely on point. So if you are writing answers, pay some attention to the directive word? Is it critically analyze? Is it elaborate? Does it say explain? Does it say explain with examples? Whatever it says requires a slightly different orientation. For instance, elaborate means simply expand and explain what the thing is without adding any personal judgments or as such critical analysis necessarily.
Right.
Critical analysis means something else. So
Right.
when writing essay, I think you should focus immediately on the point at hand and understand the issue, and whether or not it is directly asked, connect that to India, and if possible, connect it to current affairs.
Right. Okay.
And so that really makes a difference.
Okay. Now, coming back here, let us come to the crux of our today's program. Recently, you have launched this game, UPSC game, right? What exactly is it, and how it is going to benefit our students?
So the UPSC game is born out of my long fascination with the UPSC examination and with gaming. I have been very interested in gaming and the structure of games.
Right.
The UPSC game is an attempt to gamify this entire examination and all its processes and all its layers,
Right.
so that the critical insights which you learn from about this examination, which is unique about it, are embedded in that structure. The challenge is, can you take the examination and the whole syllabus of GS, optional, prelims and mains, whatever, can you turn it into a game? Can you create a structure so that the whole thing, including what the important things that a student should know, which are not even mentioned anywhere, can they be included, and can it be turned into a game? And so that was the attempt, and I did that. It took me quite a while to do that, because the examination is not easy to capture in any one single given structure, because it has a number of layers. There is prelims, mains, and syllabus differs between them.
Right.
Level of difficulty also sometimes differs, subjects differ, but sometimes the subjects also overlap. Mostly, especially in general studies, they overlap. So how should a student prepare? What strategy should they have? And how do you make sure that you follow one system? It makes you go through all of them, all of these layers, all of these subjects, all of these things at once. So that was the objective, and I ended up ultimately creating what this canvas behind me is, the UPSC Navigator. This is the UPSC Navigator, and this is essentially the board game. This is the board on which this game is played, essentially. And the way it works is that, it starts from here. It says prelims, and you will have one hexagon going here. This is general studies prelims.
Right.
This is CSAT for prelims.
Right.
And it then starts to flow downwards. So
Right.
This is mains. Here you have GS paper 1, GS paper 2, GS paper 3.
Right.
This is ethics.
Right.
This is optional subject. This is answer writing. Now
Right.
there is fine text between inscribed in these hexagons. This is the exact syllabus as mentioned in the syllabus for all of these individual topics.
Right. Right.
Now, so you might be able to see that there is color coding going on
Right.
the canvas.
Yeah.
And these color coding is capturing the subjects. Each color is representing a single subject. So for instance, if you trace the yellow, for instance, you'll find the yellow here.
Right.
Yellow stands for economics in this canvas. So you will find economics in prelims, but you will also immediately be able to pinpoint that it is going to get asked in detail in the mains in GS paper 3 as well.
Right.
And here you have the entire syllabus listed out.
Right.
And all subjects have been color coded essentially.
Right.
And this chart here is the more interesting part. This is where you actually play the game. This is where you track. This is where the student tracks their preparation. This is where they set targets for themselves. And so the objective of this game is to collect all of these gems, all of these color coded gems. So each color is represented by one hexagem, one gem, and
Right.
your job is to collect all of them. So like we were talking about the economics. So there is this portion here. And if you do everything that you need to do, you can then claim this yellow hexagem.
Mm.
And if you claim all of these gems at the bottom, then
Mm.
purportedly you will clear this examination.
Okay.
Supposedly.
Right.
And it works because the quality of preparation has been embedded. I have embedded it inside it.
Right. Right.
So there is on here, this chart is the strategizer. This is basically a modified and a rather sophisticated Gantt chart. It has been
Mm.
taken from project management, also from public administration. It was the first time I actually learned about it.
Right.
And I always wanted to use it to some very good practical purpose.
Mm.
Usually it is used for very large projects, but the UPSC is a large project. It is composed of many other sub projects.
Right. Right. That's
So,
yeah.
so that is the inspiration which has been taken. And so this divides all the subjects listed out here are all the subjects from in general studies or optional in prelims and mains. And listed here are the steps which a student needs to follow
Okay.
in order to prepare them.
Right.
So these steps are big picture formation, first reading, second reading, analyzing previous year questions, revisions, and testing. Right. So if you take these 6 tasks and if you divide them between all these subjects, you will get 102 micro goals. 102 exactly.
Right.
So the whole thing has been broken down into 102 micro goals, which will ultimately constitute a individual subject. And so now you have this big goal of the UPSC examination broken into about 17 or 18 sub goals, that is hexagems, which are themselves broken into 102 micro goals, which are all of these goals that you see on this table. And each of these
are you attaching these goals any time limits?
Yes.
Yes. That means, for example,
Yes.
take the case of say prelims economy. I mean, is there any time limit during which they have to complete this prelims economy?
There is, sir, and this is the interesting part because that time limit is dynamic and a person can choose that time limit according to their needs and how and when they start the game.
Right.
If you start, say, for instance, today, and
Right.
if the prelims is 6 months away or 8 months away, this strategizer chart will ask you, it will force you to input the date. How many days do you have? Then it will force you to input actual date of completion when you actually plan to make sure that that goal, that micro task is completed. So you say, for instance, economics, I would like to complete in 1 month, for instance. Right. Now that is not a very manageable goal because it's a very big goal. It needs to be broken down. And so you break it down into micro goals. Those micro goals can be given dates. So you give it a date. I will do first reading of economics in say 4 days. So this will force you to input here the date 4 days from now. Right. You will input that date. And then when actually the student completes that goal, it will ask to input the actual date of completion. And so once both are inputted, you will know exactly, the student will know exactly how much time they have taken, how much time they thought it will take, and how much it actually took. Then they can compare what is going on, and they will be able to adjust their goals accordingly. And they will be able to.
Does it also includes, does it also includes how much time they should take also, ideally?
Yes. When they start playing the game, I do give them templates. But I give them a margin of about 10 to 20% of flexibility, because some people come with different backgrounds. Right. People come with different strengths and weaknesses. And so that is a very important thing, which I think was lacking, at least in my preparation and in all people, in many aspirants. There is no flexibility. They get a single formula, a single study plan, which not everybody likes to follow. Not everybody can and should follow. So everybody ends up making their own strategy. And everybody does it in a rudimentary way. Right. And so the idea behind this is that everybody, whoever uses this, plays this game, will not only enjoy some gamification, they will be able to structure their whole goal very, very minutely and creatively and scientifically. And so the game itself can be played in 2 modes. A player could play with themselves. This just needs to be pasted on a wall and then you can play it. And you might notice these QR codes here. these QR codes are embedded in the. So if you scan these, it will tell you some important information about ethics. You scan this one, it will tell you about important information about essay and so on and so on and so on. So the idea was that everything that you need, the student needs, from syllabus to strategy to planning to important resources, should be there in one place. And
So
that
what is
that
that
place,
information? What is that information do they have? For
yes,
example,
sir, if you
if I scan ethics, right? What is the information that I'll be getting?
you will get previous year questions. You will also get how to tackle test series and a few very important and interesting articles, some of which I have written and some of which others have written, my batchmates and so on. So essentially, you will get articles, resources, videos, and whatever resources I can find, including my own notes, which you will find if you scan this optional subject. You will find. And this, because it's on the back end, I can keep updating it. And so I keep adding volume to it as it progresses, as it goes along.
That means in this game, students will also get important study material also.
Yes.
Right.
But that's not the most interesting part, sir. The most interesting part is the multiplayer mode in which they can play against me. So sir, what happens is that, let's say a student starts a game and they are starting their preparation. The goal of this game is to collect all of these gems at the bottom so that success can be achieved, and to do so scientifically within a time frame.
Right.
Sir, if in the multiplayer mode, say somebody wants to claim economics or polity, they will prepare themselves. Then they will call for a test. I will give them a test.
Okay.
A very detailed test, which can include multiple choice questions. It can include answer writing questions. It can also include voice notes.
Right.
And they need to attempt that test and submit their response within 24 hours of receiving that test.
Okay.
Whenever they call for that test, 24 hours I will give them to solve that question paper, which I expect within 24 hours. And if the level of understanding and maturity is close to what is required in this examination, they pass that test. Otherwise, they don't. And if they don't pass 2 or more of these tests, then it is game over. However, if they continue passing these tests, they keep unlocking challenges, they keep unlocking new and new resources and
यूपीएससी सीएससी की प्रिपरेशन प्रैक्टिस क्वेश्चंस के बिना इनकम्प्लीट है, इसलिए अनअकैडमी पे अभियान T20 जैसे डेली टेस्ट्स आपको यूपीएससी सीएससी की प्रिपरेशन को स्ट्रेंथन करने में सपोर्ट करते हैं। एडिशनली आप हर वीक अनअकैडमी कॉम्बैट देकर अप टू 100% स्कॉलरशिप भी अवेल कर सकते हैं। टेस्ट स्टार्ट करने के लिए अपने होम पेज पर स्क्रॉल करें और ट्राई अ मॉक टेस्ट पर क्लिक करें। अभियान टेस्ट को सेलेक्ट करें, टेस्ट पे टैप करें और स्टार्ट टेस्ट से स्टार्ट करें। करिए आज ही शुरुआत इंडिया के अनअकैडमी फ्री टेस्ट सीरीज के साथ।